Hi guys, welcome back TV Spoilers. Today I'm going to reveal to you the legal consequences. Mariah is arrested and faces prison time. Mariah can't escape the law. The police have placed a warrant for her arrest everywhere. Sharon is helpless watching her daughter face jail. Is there any way she can rescue her daughter? Tune into our channel to find out what's happening in this dramatic chase involving Mariah. The aftermath hits Genoa City with the kind of silence that feels louder than sirens. Because the crisis doesn't end when the police finally find Mariah, it only changes shape. The moment officers move in on that hidden location and the door gives way, the story fractures into two truths that have existed at the same time. Dominic is alive, and Mariah is the reason everyone had to fear he wouldn't be. Dominic is carried back into the world like a fragile miracle, and the relief that follows him is so immediate it almost feels like guilt. Guilt for every ugly thought people had in the panic. Guilt for how quickly love can curdle into suspicion when a child disappears. Abby's arms close around Dominic and her body reacts before her mind can catch up, trembling with the kind of gratitude that doesn't feel clean because it's welded to anger she doesn't want to admit. Devon stands close enough to shield from the cameras and the questions, but even he can't block the reality that settles like ash. Their son is safe, yet the damage has already taken residence in every relationship that tried to survive the search. Mariah, meanwhile, is not reunited with anyone. She is taken. There is no dramatic speech, no last-second explanation, no cinematic closure, only procedure, cuffs, and this clinical decisiveness of a system that has seen too much chaos to be moved by tears. She is transported back to the Genoa City police station and placed in an interrogation room where the lights are too bright and the air is too cold, as if the room itself is designed to strip a person down to their most basic truth. The charges sit on the table like heavy stones. Kidnapping, unlawful restraint, actions that cross the line so stark the law cannot pretend it was merely a family crisis. And yet the tension in the room isn't simply about whether Mariah did it. That part was already been answered by the fact that Dominic is back and she is in custody. The tension is about why. About what kind of mind decides that taking a child is the only way to survive an eternal storm. About how a city that knows trauma too well is supposed to respond when mental instability and criminal behavior collide head-on. Outside that room, the ripples spread into every corner of the families involved. Because in Genoa City, nothing stays contained. Abby and Devon exist in the most brutal emotional contradiction, relief so intense it nearly collapses them, and heartbreak that keeps reopening as soon as they look at Dominic and imagine what he might remember later. What shadows might cling to him even if he can't name them. They want to focus on the reunion, on the promise that he's home, but they can't escape the knowledge that home now includes questions they never wanted to ask. Abby's protective instincts harden to something sharper the longer she sits with the facts. She can feel her compassion trying to rise, because part of her understands how mental health can distort reality, but then another part of her interrupts with a harsh, maternal truth. Understanding does not rewind time. Devon's reaction is quieter, but no less intense. He tries to be steady because he knows Dominic will need steadiness. Yet his steadiness is threaded with a simmering frustration that someone could make their child a symbol in a private war inside their own mind. Sharon and Tessa are pulled into a different kind of wreckage, one that isn't measured in legal statuses but in emotional limits. They are forced to look at Mariah and recognize both the person they love and the person who made a terrifying choice. That recognition is its own punishment. Sharon's love for her daughter doesn't switch off because the handcuffs click, but love doesn't erase accountability either, and she knows the law will not be softened by maternal grief. Tessa, who has lived inside the fragile hope of believing Mariah could be okay, has to confront the truth that okay was never a stable destination, only a temporary ceasefire. Their support becomes something constrained and complicated, showing up, speaking carefully, offering what they can without denying what happened, because the moment they try to pretend Mariah is only a victim of her mind, they risk disrespecting Abby and Devon's terror. And the moment they treat her only as a criminal, they risk abandoning a woman whose instability may be a medical emergency as much as a moral collapse. The legal machinery starts moving fast, because cases involving children always do. A defense attorney is appointed, and immediately the strategy is shaped by the most volatile element of the entire situation: Mariah's mental state. This isn't about inventing excuses, it's about explaining reality in a language the court will accept. The attorney accepts building a narrative that doesn't deny the seriousness of the kidnapping charge, but frames through the lens of psychological instability, emphasizing that whatever Mariah believed she was doing, she was not functioning with a stable, rational understanding of consequences. The word competency hangs over everything, heavy and decisive. It becomes clear that the next step isn't just jail or bail, not just punishment or probation, but an evaluation that could determine whether Mariah is sent to prison or forced into psychiatric hospitalization. In a town where people have survived kidnappings, breakdowns, and betrayals, this still feels uniquely raw, because it's not a stranger or a faceless villain. It's someone connected by blood and love, someone who once felt like family to people now forced to testify against her. When the broader Newman and Abbott families learn the full scope of what happened, the response is predictably explosive, not in fireworks, but in fractured loyalties and arguments about what the right thing means. Some see the situation as primarily a crime and insist the consequences must be clear, because if the law bends here, it tells the city that trauma excuses anything. Others insist that mental illness is not a convenient legal trick, it's the center of the tragedy, and that treating Mariah like a monster is an easy moral shortcut that avoids the harder truth. People can be dangerous without being evil, and the system must protect the public while also acknowledging illness. The conflict isn't just philosophical, it's personal. Every opinion carries hidden subtext about family reputation, about fear of what headlines might do, about whether supporting Mariah means betraying Abby and Devon, about whether supporting Abby and Devon means abandoning Mariah. Even the people trying to be compassionate about themselves, sharpening their compassion into conditions, we will help, but only if she admits it. We will stand by her, but only if she gets treatment. We will not let her near the child again, not ever, not even if she's better. Mariah's mandatory psychiatric evaluation becomes the hinge of the entire future. It is both a safeguard and a sentence waiting to be defined. In that evaluation, every symptom matters, every moment of disorientation, every indication that she can't distinguish her impulses from reality. The result will determine not only where she goes, but how the court views her responsibility. If she is deemed incompetent, the case shifts toward treatment, containment in a hospital setting, long-term monitoring. If she is deemed competent, then the legal system moves toward a more traditional path: detention, trial preparation, the looming possibility of prison. And in the cruelest twist of all, either outcome is terrifying in a different way. Prison suggests punishment without healing, the fear that Mariah will deteriorate in an environment designed for control rather than recovery. Hospitalization suggests a different kind of loss, years swallowed by treatment, autonomy stripped away, the recognition that even if she gets better, the life she knew will not be waiting for her. The preliminary hearing is scheduled, and it doesn't feel like a date on a calendar so much as a countdown. The word preliminary sounds almost gentle, but nothing about this is gentle. It is a formal moment where the city's fear becomes legal record, where the narrative is arranged into evidence and testimony, where Mariah's fate begins to harden into something that can't be softened later to regret. Abby and Devon are pulled toward that hearing with dread. They want justice, they want safety, they want a line drawn so Dominic is protected, but they also dread being the faces of condemnation against someone who once mattered. Sharon and Tessa brace for the humiliation of public scrutiny, for the possibility that every mistake Mariah made will be replayed and flattened into gossip. The defense prepares to argue instability, the prosecution prepares to argue danger, and Mariah, at the center of it all, faces the reality that she is no longer steering the story. The story is steering her. And what makes this whole arc so painful, so intensely Y&R, is that the city doesn't get to move on just because Dominic is safe. The reunion doesn't erase the trauma. It simply changes the trauma's shape. Abby and Devon will look at their son and wonder what cracks formed in a place too young to explain to them. Sharon and Tessa will look at Mariah and wonder how long they missed the warning signs, and whether love can actually be enough when the mind turns into a battlefield. The Newmans and the Abbotts will argue in a polished room in private corners, and each argument will be less about the law and more about fear. Fear that if this happened to Mariah, it can happen to anyone. Fear that the line between family crisis and crime is thinner than they ever wanted to believe. I'll be honest, as someone watching this kind of story unfold, I feel that familiar mix of heartbreak and helpless anger that soaps somehow manage to pull out of you when they're at your best. There's relief, real relief, that Dominic is back. because the child's safety always be the one non-negotiable outcome. But there's also this heavy sadness, because the return doesn't feel like victory. It feels like survival after something that never should have happened. And maybe that's the most unsettling part. The sense that the courtroom will decide where Mariah sleeps, but it won't decide whether anyone truly heals. That decision will happen in quieter places. Inside Abby when she flinches at an unexpected shock, inside Devon when he checks the locks twice without thinking, inside Sharon when she wonders whether motherhood can protect a child from herself, inside Tessa when she tries to love someone she can't fully trust right now. The hearing is coming. The evaluation will land like a verdict disguised as a diagnosis, and Genoa City will pretend it wants closure even as it leans toward the next shock. Because deep down, we all know this isn't the end of the story. It's the moment right before the doors open and the consequences finally walk in. On our TV Spoilers channel, I will seek content inspiration for each video by compiling short video clips to analyze and offer my personal opinions. This channel specializes in analyzing, theorizing, and discussing plot points in the Young and the Restless series from the perspective of a longtime fan. Through this, viewers can gain deeper, more objective, and more interesting perspectives. Subscribe to the channel to stay updated on the latest news about the Young and the Restless series.